Hello, hang on, let me do it right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursday Talk Season 2, where we're still doing the casual, improvised youth services that we do. And so, yeah, I'm not gonna get much into the details of what I've been up to because I can do that in the story. So we're gonna jump right in. So the subject of Sabbath is one that has been tossed around a lot over the social medias lately, and so for that reason, I decided that for tonight's talk, I would cover my experiences with Sabbath. Now, this is not meant to be a theological discussion of the Sabbath or a debate of criticisms commonly associated with Sabbath, but I figured I would share you guys just how I do Sabbath or how I've done Sabbath through most of my life. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to go ahead and read to you guys Mark 2:27, which says, "And he says to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath." So this is a verse that is used a lot, both by Sabbath keepers and people who disagree with the concept of Sabbath in today's day. They were Jesus' own words, so I think we're all in agreement that they are good words. And so what it's basically saying is that Sabbath is for us and that we are meant to serve the Sabbath. So what does that mean? Well, I'll get to that later. But right now, we're going to go back into story time land. Specifically, hang on, I'm trying to figure out what's the best angle here for me. Specifically to when I was a youngin', right? My earliest memories. I should mention, I was born and raised in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, so take that as you will. But one of my earliest memories is getting ready for church. And, you know, my parents, they were very strict when it came to what we wore to church. We had to look good. That means we were 3 years old and we had on our little tiny suits and our tiny vests with a tiny tie, which, you know, was very constricting. We weren't a fan of that, but one thing that we were a fan of was breakfast. You see, back then, our parents made sure to make us a breakfast every single day. And typically it were things that we were not very fond of, like oatmeal and cream of wheat and a whole bunch of other stuff that, again, I just didn't care. Pancakes, but my mother's pancakes back then were like yay thick. Instead of having like a whole bunch of stack of thin pancakes, she would make one big pancake. I wasn't a fan of that back in the day. So yeah, Sabbath though, we didn't get a homemade breakfast. We got to eat cereal. Which, as a young, impressionable child growing up in the 90s, yeah, cereal was everywhere in commercials. So, yay cereal, yay for Honey Nut Cheerios, yay for Raisin Bran, and whatnot. So, that was one of the highlights, I think, for me. Sabbath meant we get to eat milk and cereal. And I know that's not a big deal for you guys, but back then it was kind of a big deal. So, after breakfast and after we got ready, we would drive off to church. And then we'd arrive, and we'd be expected to be on our best behavior. We would be sent to Sabbath school, which I already spoke about my Sabbath school experiences last season, so check that one out. But yeah, we would do our Sabbath schools and hang out with our church mates that were the same age. I'm not going to say they were friends, but you know, church peeps. And then we come back, and we'd be expected to be quiet up until the children's corner. And then we'd be expected to be quiet for the rest of it. I remember potluck back in that old church. It was in the basement, but this was an unfinished basement where there was a huge furnace that would look very dangerous. It might have actually been dangerous. Then again, I'm going off by memory, and I was very young back then, like 3-4 years old. So maybe I'm remembering them, but I remember the whole concept of going into the unfinished, spooky-looking basement and eating lunch near a furnace. And I was not a fan of that, but my parents always said about the importance of fellowshipping together. And then we go back home and where we would watch a bunch of VHS tapes on biblical characters. Now, at this point in time, I remember we had, I'm not even going to say they were cartoons. They were based on the Golden Book series, which is not really Christian books, but Golden Book did cover a couple of Bible stories. And so these just had like the worst ad-libbing and oh, it was terrible. But we were young, impressionable children. So I enjoyed watching those very much every single Sabbath until I fell asleep or something. I don't even remember what happened. But I do remember this. I remember I don't know what I call it, Sabbath Vespers, our end of Sabbath service at home. And yeah, I remember it was very serene as a child. It impacted me like this was something magical. But the other thing that I remember about our end of Sabbath service is that I couldn't wait for it to be over because after Sabbath we got to play video games. I know, that's really bad. I couldn't wait for Sabbath to be over because I knew that we got to play Super Mario Brothers at the end of Sabbath. Now, my parents back then were young, and to them, video games was like a fleeting trend. So they didn't think they were going to raise gamers, but it kind of happened. But yeah, so that was, hello, how are you? I am sharing of my Sabbath experiences growing up. So I just finished wrapping up my, my early years. So from here on, I'm going to move to the sort of next year. So from here on out, we moved and we were no longer living, I'm not going to give up where I used to live, but we were no longer living in that area. We moved to a different area, one with different weather, so to speak. And so over here, Sabbath was different. I remember that Sabbath meant we had to walk a lot as we didn't have a car when we moved to this new region. So every morning we would walk for what back then felt like an eternity to me. Now, around this time I was like around 7 or 8. So it probably, even if it wasn't that long of a walk, it felt long to me. And this was something we had to do every single Sabbath. Didn't really look forward to that. But once we got to the church, it was business as usual. There was the Sabbath school, and then there was the service, and then there was the potluck, and then we would go canvassing. Now, as you guys know, I'm extremely shy, and I hate making eye contact and talking to people. So canvassing to me was torture. Luckily for us back then, if memory serves me correctly, we would leave in a large group, arrive at a neighborhood, and then everyone would sort of branch out so that there would be very few houses that we ourselves had to hit up. And then once we did that, we would all go home. But even then, I just didn't like it. It was really annoying. It made me dread Sabbath just for that reason, and that reason alone. I don't remember what we would do after that. I know there was talks about signing us up for adventurers and maybe pathfinders, but we never actually did it. We didn't want to, and our parents decided not to sign us up. I should have probably fixed this button before I started live streaming, but I digress. So where are we now in this story? So what else did we do? Oh yeah, this was also around the same time that our parents started visiting people in the hospital or the sick, and again they would bring us with them because we're their kids and they wanted to teach us how to do good. But again, when you're a little kid hanging around hospitals, it's not great. You learn to have compassion for people, but it's still not a great place to be in as a child. So anyways, we move again. And so now I'm around the age of like 9, 10, 11. Whew. Where do I begin? So, you will go to church. Church was more ordered back then. And it was the service. Afterwards, we would sometimes stay on potluck, but more often than not, we were invited to a luncheon at one of the brothers' house, and sometimes we were the ones who were hosting the luncheon. But here's where it starts getting interesting, because now that we're older, our parents' expectations for us in Sabbath are a bit more, right? We weren't just going on the canvassing. We actually were expected to say a script, which, while I do believe parents need to instill their values and their kids, it's not fun when children read. I always feel that children reading a script sounds so forced. That was probably me. Sounds just so forced, and it was just not the best. On top of that, we also started a ministry of visiting the old folks home, which again, when you're a child, old folks home not a great place to be. But yeah, we lasted a long time. I think we stayed for like 3 years with this ministry, maybe even 4. Many years went by. We would do this like clockwork every Sabbath. And in the winter months, by the time we left the old folks home, Sabbath was over. In the summer months, there were still a few more hours of Sabbath. Now, at this time, there is definitely an expectation for our parents to start signing us up, either to Up for Adventurers or Pathfinders. And we didn't want to do it. We were already involved in a lot of the children's programs at our church. So we as children didn't see the point on taking on another one just because of tradition. And I'm not saying that Pathfinder is just a tradition, but I don't think it would have helped us specifically back then. So I just said no, and my parents listened, which is rare because the parents don't really usually listen to us. But I don't know, I guess Pathfinder is expensive. And again, we were already doing a lot of things. So that was something. It seems that our parents, in wanting us to be more active in the church, sort of let the whole church know that we were open for whatever, right? You need someone to sing, call us. You need someone to act, call us. You need someone to read the Bible, call us. And this is probably one of those things I actually agree with my parents, because yeah, you should make children part of the church, even if my parents didn't realize what they were doing, if they were just doing it for clout or to teach us something. They actually incorporated us into the normal services of the church, which is a good thing. So yeah, at this point, church is just, almost lost it. Church is just something that I do, and I didn't really think much of it. But then we go to the next phase. Right now we're teenagers. And this is a tricky phase. Teenagers is normally when people rebel. I personally didn't rebel, but now there is an expectation for us to lead and to do a lot of work. Like I remember Sabbath went from simply being, church and me doing some activities to me doing way too many activities on Saturday. And I felt like Saturday was the busiest day of the week, even though Sabbath is supposed to be rest. That's what it's supposed to be, just rest. Yet, I don't know, it kind of got lost on me. And, at that age, you're kind of trying to please the church and because you look up to them. But yeah, it was very tiring, and it didn't really slow down from there. So I go from like my early teens to my later teens. In my later teens, things started being a little difficult because my parents were were in the middle of a divorce, right? They were going through a divorce. That's not the point of any of this. I just want to know that because of that, our house was kind of chaotic. And my parents didn't normally go to church, mainly because they didn't want to run into each other there. So there wasn't an expectation for us to go to church at that time. And so my brother and I sort of had creative differences at this point. My brother decided that he was going to just experience all of the activities that church had to offer, even if it wasn't our local church. So he started just visiting every single church that he could, finding a way of just participating on Vespers and camps and whatnot. So that was sort of my brother's philosophy during my parents' divorce. He was just going to have fun at a variety of different churches. I had a different opinion, and that was church was stability. I'm not going to try to make it sound like I was doing it for spiritual reasons, but when you're in the middle of a divorce and everything is changing, it's nice to have something that doesn't change. So I kept going to church, if anything, just because I knew that it would remain the same. And of course, I was also doing a lot of things. And at this point, I remember the church, they kept saying that they needed more people to help. What was I don't know if it wasn't canvassing. I think it was to minister to a specific people on the list. I don't even remember what it was, but the church was continually saying, we need more volunteers, we need more volunteers, we need more volunteers. And so 16-year-old me goes, hey, I could volunteer. So I tell my cousin, who also went to church with us, and he was like, if you go, I'll go. So the two of us show up to these meetings, and we're like, yeah, you guys, and then everybody looks at us like, why are you guys here? And we're like, oh, well, you guys said you need more volunteers, and we're church members, so we want to volunteer. There was a very uncomfortable look, and the church just decided, like, okay, but you're not gonna be together. We're gonna break you guys up with more seasoned veterans of this ministry, and yeah, that's what they did, and it was actually very fun. Especially, I think that what made it the most fun was the fact that it was something that I was doing without the instruction or involvement of my parents. So it was just sort of nice of what church can be when I'm on my own. And yeah, fast forward a few years later, and now I'm in college, and I went to a local college, so I never really left town. And yeah, at this point, I still go to church, but because of the heavy study load, I'm not involved in anything, right? Because I actually needed, again, to rest on the seventh day. And most people at church were understanding of this. I did help out in a few things. And then towards the end of my college years, I ended up helping out. Wait, was it the end of my college years when I ended up helping out a lot? Why did my voice just go high-pitched? That was weird. Well, I don't remember exactly where in the timeline it fits. But yeah, at first I was just, doing college and whatnot and going through my own stuff. And in college, that's when I sort of had the spiritual awakening. And that's when I can say for real that I was a Christian and not just the son of a Christian couple. So that was fun. That was very fun. Then I come back and I end up becoming, I ended up being involved in many ministries, but now I'm involved in these ministries as an adult. Ooh, and that was crazy because I would show up to church in the morning, sometimes before sunrise, and by the time I would leave, it was after sunset. And that is how busy I was. And I remember one day I just said something like, this doesn't feel right to me. Like, I am way too overworked for a day of rest. And people just told me, like, that's the real rest, work. And I remember looking at them going like, no, you don't understand. Those two words are a contradiction of one another. Now, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with doing, good works on Sabbath, but Sabbath does mean rest. And so eventually I will become an advocate of just resting on Sabbath. And rest as much as you can, because 6 days shall thou work. And the Sabbath it's just rest. So yeah, now I'm at the point where I try to take it easy on Sabbath. That's not to say that I don't get involved in ministries, but I really try to take it easy on the Sabbath, because when you're able to rest, like literally rest your weary self. Okay, I need to do something about this thing. It keeps clacking way too much. But when you're able to, I'm talking about my closet though. when you're able to really rest, that is just an amazing feeling. And I feel that sometimes we become too businesslike and we lose track of what really matters. And yes, I'm not saying that we should cancel ministries in favor of resting, but we shouldn't forsake resting either. I was about to say something very profound, but it just completely slipped my mind right when I was gonna say it. So with that said, I'm gonna read us very quickly. Actually, I'm gonna go back to Mark 2:27 that said, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath." So what do I think that this verse is trying to say? If man was made for Sabbath, then that means that we now have a duty to Sabbath itself, that we need to appease the Sabbath. But if Sabbath was made for man, then that means that Sabbath has a duty for us to appease us. And again, considering that Sabbath is rest, I've always felt like, or not always, but I have come to the realization that Sabbath is meant to be a delight for us, not just another heavy load of work, though different kind of work. And with that said, I'm going to jump right back into Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11, which is the fourth commandment, the Sabbath commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested the Sabbath day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So there you have it. The seventh commandment it's given us in the instruction how to keep the Sabbath holy, and it's also telling us the why. And to this day, I like Sabbath. I really do, because we do get overworked sometimes. And I like the ability to just shut off my brain one day of the week and just focus on something else. And then once that something else is over, we go back to business as usual. Oops, sorry, excuse me. The whole point of this is because since last year's, the subject of how do I spend my Sabbath had come up a lot, and these conversations have occurred where everyone shares their experiences, and some have been more strict than others, and others just haven't done anything, while others, they have a workload much larger than anything that I ever did. So I felt that in order to start off the new year doing Thursday Talks, I will sort of let you in on how I do Sabbath. Now, I understand that most of you are going to watch it as a replay, so go ahead and leave a comment on how you tend to spend your Sabbath days and what you do, and how does that make you feel? Because despite the fact that most of us watching this are Adventists, Sabbath is different around the world, and even within local churches and within different families. What we do or don't do tends to vary greatly. And I don't know if there's a one right way of doing things. I know I like to, on my free time, I like to, not debate, but, well, yeah, I guess debate. Yeah, I like to debate people if the way we think is always the right one, because within the Adventist space there is this idea that medical work on Sabbath is okay. To which I always ask, is it really though? But that's a whole nother debate. A whole nother debate. And I like seeing how people either defend their point of view or fold and agree with me. It's a fun discussion. So yeah, Sabbath days. What do you guys do? Pathfinders, canvassing, spend the day in nature. Oh, that was another day in nature. I completely forgot. Sabbath day was a day that we used to go on hikes. How did I forget nature? But yeah, walks in nature, movies. Oh, another one was the greatest Bible stories ever told, which was narrated by Charleston Heston. I think that's who it was. Was it? Yeah, I think so. And I had that collection as a child, and we would watch it and laugh at all the animation bloopers. There were a lot. What else is there? Visiting other churches, staying home, Sabbath school, Bible studies, small groups, arts and crafts. So yeah, there's many different ways that people celebrate the Sabbath, and yeah, I thought I'd share with you guys. So yes, now we are back to doing Thursday talks, and as always, these are improvised, and I myself don't always know when I'm gonna do this. So I want to say next Thursday we'll be here, but I don't know. Maybe. Keep our fingers crossed. I'll see you guys when I see you guys. So with that said, God bless you all. Thank you for coming, and I will see you next time. Until later. I always forget how to end these things. Oh, here it is. End video. Bye bye.